Hi, everyone. Kelly from Yoga for You here, and I am here to teach you this masterclass from yoga class to yoga experience. And I am so grateful that you're here, and I'm really excited to share this class with you. The reason that I decided to design this class is because I get questions all the time from former students, new students, people who haven't even trained with me but want to grow their yoga business. And they all want to know, how can I stand out in a crowd? My market is so saturated. There's so many classes. There's so many instructors. How can I fill mine? How can I really share something special? And I always tell them the same thing. I say you have to stop offering yoga classes and you need to start offering a yoga experience. And so I'm here today to show you exactly how to do that, how to take your class to an experience, how to grow your business, fill your classes, and really thrive. So the first thing I wanted to do is introduce myself for any of you taking this class and we haven't met or we don't know one another. So I'm Kelly. I'm the founder of Yoga for You and the designer of the Yoga for You teaching method. I'm an ERYT 500 and a YACEP. I've taught over 4,000 classes. They're probably about half and half private sessions and public classes. I have designed a 200-hour teacher training, the Yoga for You teacher training. And I am also the host of the Mindful in Minutes podcast. So that is a podcast where every week I do a different guided meditation. And I also every month talk about kind of just a different topic that I'm passionate about that has to do with mindfulness. I have done everything from be a studio owner to an online teacher to providing workshops and traveling and you name it. I've done it. And so I want to save you from all of the mistakes that I have made, and I want to just be able to help other yoga instructors grow. I felt like I really struggled at first to really find my voice as a teacher and know where to start. So that is kind of where my passion lies, and that is where the Yoga for You method was born. But let's stop talking about me and let's start talking about you and how you can create these awesome yoga classes, or should I say yoga experiences. So what exactly is a yoga experience? The first thing that I want you to do is I want you to think back to a class that always sticks in your mind for a good reason. So try to think of one of the classes that you have always thought is one of the best. It's just one that really resonated with you. And then once you have a clear picture of that in your mind, I want you to start thinking about why it was so great. Why does that one come to mind when you think of a really great rockin' yoga class? What did the teacher do that was so special? Why has it stuck with you? Try to bring yourself back to that space and imagine that class. And start making a mental note, or maybe you write down notes. Why was it so special? Was it because of the way you felt after the class? Was it something that the instructor did during the class? Was it something that happened before the class? My guess is it was probably all of those things. And what you're thinking of is what I would describe as a yoga experience. So when you are thinking about a yoga experience, we want to elevate our classes. We don't want to just offer a 60 or 75-minute class with pretty good sequencing and, just having average classes. I don't really know how else to say it other than we want to elevate our classes from average to amazing. And so we want to give a lot of thought to what we are doing. And these are, in my opinion, the elements of a yoga experience. So the first thing is that a yoga experience is taught by a masterful and authentic teacher, right? There's really no way around that. You need to make sure that you are letting your radiance shine. You're speaking with confidence, and don't be afraid to show your humanness. So when I say that it needs to be a masterful and authentic teacher, that doesn't mean it's a perfect teacher. It means that it's someone that is allowing themselves to be vulnerable, is putting thought behind the class, speaking with confidence, and really getting up there and teaching that yoga class. If you're still working on finding your voice as a teacher, as many of us are, keep working on that. It'll come. It will come. Just keep speaking from the heart. Try not to be what I call a parrot, so not just, mimicking your instructors, but start speaking with your voice. A yoga experience will awaken all of the senses. So when you are teaching this experience, you should be thinking about all of the senses, not just what do I see, what do I hear? What does the yoga instructor look like? Can I hear good cueing? It's so much more than that. We want to wake up all of the senses. And you want to make sure that you are teaching and not just leading. So it's pretty easy for someone to find a class online, or maybe they have an old class they've used and they just lead it. And so they kind of stand up in the front of the class and walk through the poses and have good cueing and, good music, but not really teach anything. In order to offer a yoga experience, you want to have your student be taught. Every single time they should walk away with something that they learned. And don't worry if you're starting to get overwhelmed. We're going to talk about all of these more. You also want to make sure that your student has a sense of worth, belonging, and community. So your student should always feel welcomed, encouraged, worthy, and most importantly, connected with you, their teacher. And there's really no way around it. You need to have a plan, rock solid sequencing, and an intention behind your class. Always. A yoga experience is not something that just happens just because we wing it and see what happens. There is a lot of thought and a lot of work that goes behind creating this experience. But if you are willing to put that work in, you will really see growth. Now think back to that class that I told you to think about a few minutes ago and think about what I just said. So that class, did it have those elements? Was it taught by a masterful and authentic teacher? Did it awaken your senses? Did they teach you something? Did you feel like you were worthy, you belonged, you were part of something? And my guess is that that instructor probably had that intention and that rock solid sequencing and a great theme. So I am willing to bet that when you thought of that class, you were thinking of a yoga experience. And get excited because you are going to learn how to offer experiences just like that. All right, so let's dive deeper into each of these elements. First, we're going to talk about what makes a masterful teacher. The first thing, a masterful teacher is authentic. Your students are there to learn from you, and they want to connect with you. They're not just there just to take any class. They're there to learn from you. So present yourself as nothing more or nothing less than who you are. That's it. Just be you. And I know that that sounds like kind of a cliche, and everyone says that, but it really is so important. I work with a lot of instructors on how to find their voice and how to gain confidence in the front of the class. And really all it's about is just being comfortable being yourself. I truly believe that there is a student for every teacher and a teacher for every student. And so if you just present yourself as who you are, which is enough. If you think that, well, maybe that's not enough. It is. It's enough. It's beautiful. Remember that. But if you just present yourself as who you are, the students that resonate with that will find you. They'll be there. But if you're constantly trying to be someone else, your students are not going to know really what you stand for as a teacher or who you are, and you'll start to see a decline in your classes. So the first piece of being a masterful teacher is just being authentic. That's it. And it sounds so easy, but I know it's really hard. It can be hard to get up there and to just be yourself. But I think that if you just believe in your own radiance and your own beauty, everyone else will see that too. A masterful teacher is knowledgeable and creative, right? We wouldn't be called masterful or a master if we didn't know our stuff. So if you don't feel comfortable with the basics yet, go ahead and go back, work on that. Maybe go back to your teacher training manual. Maybe find some more master classes that you can take. Take some more classes from these masterful teachers and really get a solid understanding of the basics of teaching a class. Because if we don't have those basics yet, then it's going to be hard to elevate it to an experience because we're just working on the building blocks of a class. But if you do feel comfortable with the basics and you feel like, yeah, I could come and I could offer a yoga class, right? I could come and I could fill 60 minutes with some pranayama and some asana and some shavasana and it would be good. People would be happy. Then great. Then you are the person that is ready to elevate your class to an experience. So knowledgeable and creative. Mix it up. You want to keep your students engaged in learning by bringing in new poses, themes, maybe even different setups in the room, or perhaps different styles. Maybe you start doing a little bit of a fusion. But masterful teachers are creative. They aren't just sticking to the script, right? They're always trying to elevate their teaching. They're always trying to come up with new things, and this will help your students engage, and it'll also get them excited to come practice with you. They'll be like, oh, I wonder what Kelly's doing today, or, oh, I love it when Kelly does that, or whatever it is. Mix it up. Know your stuff and be creative. So a masterful teacher always encourages students to listen to their bodies. So if you are listening to this and you know me personally, or you've taken a class or a training from me, you know that I am constantly reminding people to listen to their bodies. Always, always, always. This is like one of the foundational pillars of the Yoga for You method. And the reason actually that I named my business Yoga for You is because it's yoga for you, the student. It's not yoga for me, the teacher. It's not yoga to fill my ego and for me to show you what a great yogi I am, or, what a great handstand I can do. No, that's not my job. It's yoga for you, the student. And so it's my job to remind you of that you are there to honor your body. Yoga is and always will be a personal practice. So always encourage your students. Don't feed into competition or comparison. Don't try to push students too far into their yoga practice. Just encourage them to listen to their body. So try to quiet the mind, try to quiet the chatter so that they can actually hear the signals from their body, and then honoring those signals. So that might be, and you can tell your students this. I tell my students this all the time. Listen to your body. If your body says, I need less, then do less. If your body says, I need more, then do more. If you aren't quite sure what your body is saying, quiet the mind and you will be able to hear it. Really encourage your students not to compare themselves to one another, and that it's not a competition. Because it's not. Yoga is not a competition. It is a deep dive into the self through breath, through movement, through mindfulness. So always encourage your students to listen to their bodies. So important. And I know those of you that have taken trainings from me are probably sitting at home or wherever you are laughing, being like, yep, I've heard Kelly say that probably 5,000 times. And it's true. It's true. It really is important. And through my teaching, right, all 4,000 classes, more now probably when you're listening to this, I have never once had anyone tell me that they wished that I told them to listen to their bodies less. Ever. I've gotten all sorts of feedback, but I have never heard that. I've only had people thank me for reminding them that it's a personal practice and to listen to their bodies. So masterful teachers know this and do this. Now, if you're a masterful teacher, you want to make sure that you are always prepared, on time, and professional. Although this is just a good general life skill, you can always improve upon these things if you aren't already doing them, because your students will thank you, your boss will thank you, you will start thanking yourself. And it is just one of those cornerstones of being a masterful teacher. Just be prepared, have a plan, show up on time, and always be professional. I know that that's one of those kind of no-brainer things, but if you can do that, you will truly have a leg up on a lot of the other instructors. I have had other instructors work for me. I have, mentored other students, and really, not everyone knows to do this. So if you can do this, if you are always prepared, on time, and professional, you are masterful. And finally, and maybe one of the most important things, a masterful teacher connects with their students. They connect with them. You get to know their names. You value them. You serve them, right? You are there to serve your student. You're there to help lead them through their personal practice, their deep dive to the self, their journey to their true being. Connect with your students. They're there because they want to learn from you. And that student-teacher connection is so important. It is so important. And once you have truly connected with a student as a masterful teacher, they are your student for life. So it is so important to do this. And even if it's just for the fact that you might meet some really amazing people through your teaching. And I'm sure all of you have already done that. But if you connect with your students, you will learn so much and you will meet these amazing people. So the next item on our yoga experience list is a yoga experience awakens the senses. So an experience is going to touch all of the senses, not just a few of them. So the next time that you plan your class, I challenge you to walk through the studio doors, walk into the studio before you teach, and imagine that you are a student. So imagine that you're the student walking in for the very first time, and then check in with all the senses. So what's happening, right? What do you see? How's the lighting of the studio? Is it clean? Is it organized? Does it look like, the teacher has already been there and that they're prepared, they're ready for class? Even during class, what does the student see? Do they see strong alignment? Do they see you encouraging other students? Do they see you giving adjustments or, living your practice? What do they see? And then check in with, what do they hear? Is there music playing? Is there not music playing? I don't have an opinion on music versus no music. I think that if you have an intention behind it, both can work. I wouldn't just pick music just because or not do music just because. I would give it thought and decide which you think is best for that class. Is there chatter going on in the studio? Are other people talking? Or maybe there's silence? Again, I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but think about the tone that it sets for class. So if you were the student walking in for the first time and you walked into the studio and everyone was, kind of chattering and like having a good time and maybe checking in with one another, just think about the message that would send, right? It would probably say that maybe it's a little bit more fun, a little more upbeat, a little more laid back, kind of this community event. Versus if you walk in and it's silent, it just sets more of a tone of kind of that introspective, quiet, relaxation journey to the self. And again, neither one is better than the other, but think about which tone you want to set. And the way you're going to do this is you're just going to set the tone with how you greet your students. So when you greet them or when you walk into the room, are you also kind of, lively and chatty and engaging? Or do you come in quietly and just, welcoming people, bringing them into the space, just, going to that nice introspective place? You set the tone as the instructor. Check in with how things feel. What's the temperature of the room when you walk in? What does the energy feel like? When you give adjustments, or maybe you don't give adjustments, but if you do, how does your touch feel on others? Is it firm? Is it soft? Think about all of these things, right? The experience awakens the senses. What do they see? What do they hear? What do they feel? So we're going to talk about smell and taste. So what do your students smell? Does your studio smell like dirty yoga feet? Or does it smell like cleaner or essential oils? Or maybe it just doesn't really smell like anything. And again, right, you don't have to use essential oils. Some people are really sensitive to that. So maybe you just use all of the kind of clean and free, fragrance-free cleaning, and it just, doesn't really smell like anything. You want to put intention behind it. So what does your student smell and why? What's the intention? And what do they taste? This is the one where it gets a little bit tricky to come up with something because maybe your students aren't tasting anything when they walk into the studio, but maybe they are. Maybe you have water, maybe you have tea set out. But this is one of those things that you want to think about. An experience delights all the senses. And with taste, I often think about, like if I do a yoga nidra class or something like that, I might put like a little chocolate on everyone's mat. So they do have kind of something to taste to like wake them up after after the class. So that is one of those ways that you could wrap in taste to help create that experience. So when you walk into your class, the next time you walk into the studio, walk in, do this exercise, imagining that you're the student for the very first time, and think about, what do you hear? What do you see? What do you feel? What do you smell? What do you taste? And then take in that feedback and then elevate the class and the experience based on that. So maybe everything looks great, but it doesn't sound great. Or maybe it sounds really great, but the lights are just too harsh. We get so used to just walking into that space and so used to teaching that sometimes we forget to look at it through the student's eyes. So awaken all the senses and look at your space through the student's eyes. Just make sure that you are making your space feel sacred and special. So create a sacred space that feels welcoming and special for your students to practice in. So when you walk in and you see that maybe it's not a space that you would want to practice in, then why would your students? Use this opportunity to create a sacred space so that you can help serve your students better. So don't lead, teach. That's the next element of our yoga experience. So we can all read from a plan, call out poses, lead a perfectly good class, but we aren't just there to lead the class. We're there to teach. That's why we're called the teacher. So every time that your student comes to the mat, they should walk away having learned something. Maybe it's something small, like the proper alignment for a warrior two, or it could be something as big as how to live their yoga off the mat or how to breathe properly. But every time that your students step onto their mat with you, they should learn something. Again, it doesn't have to be huge, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel or bring them enlightenment, but you do need to teach them something. They're there to learn. And don't assume what students know or rely on the fact that they are your longtime students. So I know sometimes I've been guilty of maybe getting a little bit lazy because I have students that always come to my classes, and maybe I've given them some really great classes. I've really taught them some things. So sometimes I just fall back to leading. So just reading a plan, calling out poses, having all the elements of a class, but not giving them that experience. But we want to make sure that as a masterful teacher, that we are not getting lazy, that every single time we strive to offer this level of an experience. We offer this level of a yoga practice, and that we're teaching our students something because they're there to learn from us. You can always tell when someone is truly a masterful teacher and when they're offering an experience because they always have strong intention behind their class. So when I say they have a strong intention, I mean that they know the why behind things in their class. They're not just doing things because, they learned that's how you do it in teacher training or they've seen other people do it, but they know why they picked those elements for their class. So why did they pick that pose? Why did they pick that pranayama? What's the theme for the class? Why did you pick those poses and that pranayama as it relates to the theme? If you can't answer the why behind the things in your class, then you shouldn't expect your students to know it. So it's so important to make sure that you really think about the different elements of your class. So think back to that class that stands out in your mind. That teacher probably gave a lot of thought to every single element of that class. So they thought about, am I going to have music? Am I not going to have music? What's going to go into my sequencing? What is going to be my theme? What's going to be, kind of that thread that I'm going to weave through the whole class? How do I want my students to feel? What do I want them to learn? All of these things go into the intention and the why behind the aspects of your class. And if you start doing this, you will see just how much improvement you can have in offering these classes. It really is amazing. And your students can see that you've given thought to it. And if you know the why, it's much easier to teach it and share it with your students, and they'll deeply appreciate that. So I'm sure that you have heard about the importance of building community, and I am going to keep talking about that because it really is so important, and it is probably like that little piece that makes your class an experience. So you can have all of these other aspects that we're talking about, but if you don't have that community, that sense of belonging, you're not going to get that retention from your students, and you're not going to give them that same yoga magic. That's sometimes what I like to refer to it as that yoga magic. So always be building community and connections with your students. I've said before, and I'll say it again, the student-teacher relationship is so important. It really can be one of the most valuable things that you have. So ways to do this would be greeting your students as they walk into class and engage with them. So don't just, say, "Hi, welcome to class," right? Engage with them. Say, "Oh, hey Jen, how's it going?" Or, "Hi, welcome. I don't think I've had you in class before. Is this your first time?" Engage with them. If a student is new, walk them into class, show them around, show them where they can find props, maybe introduce them to someone else, show them how they set up their mat. If it's someone that hasn't been there in a while, notice that they haven't been there in a while. Be like, "Oh, hey, Melissa, how are you? I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks. Were you off doing something fun? Were you on vacation?" Letting them know that you missed them when they were gone and that you noticed that their presence wasn't there. Greet the students as soon as they walk into the door or they walk into your classroom and engage with them. It's probably one of the biggest and best ways to help build that community. I also highly encourage that teachers get to know their students' names and not just get to know them, but use them. And I know that this can be hard. I'm someone that's really good at faces, but not so good at names. So I'll recognize people coming in and I'll be like, "Oh, hey." And it takes me a little bit longer to work on the names, but I never stop working on the names because it's really important. And when you're going through classes, let's say you're giving adjustments or you are, helping someone with their alignment, using their name, it can be really powerful, and it just helps to connect you and the student so they know that you're talking just to them, and this bit of this teaching, this advice, this adjustment is just for them. And it really does help that connection. And I know that studio schedules sometimes can get really crazy. We've all been there where we have those classes back to back to back to back to back, but make sure that you're making yourself available before and after class, whether that's for questions, comments, feedback, whatever it is, even if it's just, 10 minutes before, 10 minutes after. Make sure that you're making yourself available to connect with your students and to help them and serve them. And it really does make a big difference, right? We've all been in those classes where we've wanted to ask the teacher a question, but we didn't want to ask it out in the middle of class, but we wanted to maybe just ask them after class, but then you can't find them because they've just bolted out the door. And I understand because I have been that teacher and still often am that teacher that has things booked back to back to back to back, and it can be really crazy. But make sure that you do take that time, even if it's just a few minutes, and let your students know. Be like, "Hey, if anyone has any questions or comments or feedback for me after class, you can find me at the front desk. I'm going to hang out for a few minutes." And let them know where they can find you and that it's okay for them to ask those questions and to connect. Make sure that you are always welcoming new people into your space and be the example. So what I mean by that is, as a teacher, you get the opportunity and also the responsibility of setting the tone for your space. So I'm going to tell a little bit of a story, and I tell this one a lot because it has always stuck with me. So there was a time that I was practicing at the studio and I really liked it. And it's actually a place when I go back home, I still go there. But there was a time I was going to this class and I was going with an instructor, and I had never taken her class before, but I knew that, she was pretty deeply rooted in the spiritual stuff, and it was a restorative class. And I had one of those days where everything was going wrong, literally everything was going wrong. And one thing turned to the next and the next. And before I knew it, I was running late to class. And, I came in, I was like 5 minutes late, and, the person at the front desk let me in and said, okay, go ahead and go in, just enter quietly. So I was like, okay. So, I just kind of snuck in and opened the door quietly, and they're already kind of working on their opening and their mindfulness. And when I walked in, the instructor just looked up at me and gave me this look like I was the most irritating person she had ever seen. And with one little like flick of her hand, she rolled her eyes and was like, "Oh, all right, come in." And that, honestly, that ruined my whole class. And I never, ever went back to that teacher because she had the opportunity to either act the way she did and, be really clearly irritated by me and set the tone for our student teacher relationship to be one of, oh, I find you really annoying and I can't believe that you came 5 minutes late. Hurry up and get in here and stop disturbing me. Or she could have responded in a way with compassion and, just kind of looked at me and maybe smiled and given me a silent wave and just kind of pointed to an empty space where I could have snuck in. So as the teacher, you have the opportunity to set the tone for your class. So are you going to, be very serious and have the expectation that your students are never late? Or are you going to, have some compassion and let people know that, that we always want to be on time, but that sometimes life happens or there's traffic or whatever. And also make sure, this is probably one of my biggest yoga pet peeves. And this was also this was at the same studio, and I don't want to make it sound like this place is a bad place, because I really do love it there. When I go back home, that's where I practice, and like 99% of it is yoga magic. It's just these two instances that have stuck out in my mind, and I think the reason they stuck out in my mind was because I was so used to having my yoga magic, my yoga experience, that when I had these two kind of strange interactions or kind of rough interactions, it really stuck with me because it seemed so odd. But there was this class and a really well-known instructor, and her classes are always full. They're still always full, and they should be, because she is an amazing instructor. She's incredible. But I came into class, and I came in, just a few minutes before class started, and I went to go and find a spot. And everyone had already rolled out their mats, and they had kind of, rolled them out normally, so there's a little bit of space in between. And I came in and I politely asked, like I first went in, and no one moved their mat, like no one made space for me. So then I went over to, these two women, and they had a space in between their mats that like wasn't quite big enough for my mat, but almost. And so I was like, hey, would you mind if I like squeezed in here? And the one woman goes, yes, I would mind. And which I was like, oh, well, okay. And so then I had to go and kind of do this like walk of shame until I found people that were willing to move their mats for me. And that has always been one of my biggest yoga pet peeves, or like people get in their spot and they won't move. Or if they have to move, it's like annoying. And so I made sure that when I was a teacher, anytime someone came in and the class was really full, or maybe they came in a minute or two late, that I'm the first one to move my mat to make space. That sets the tone, saying that this is a community, everyone here is welcome, and that we don't have spots here, and that we make room for everyone. And I think that's so important because it sets the tone of caring and service and compassion that we want with our students. So make sure that when you have new students coming in, that you welcome them, and also make sure that you're the first one to move your mat, and that you're the first one to, if someone needs a block, give them yours, right? Set that tone. Let your students know that feeling of kindness and compassion and community is expected, and it's important to you. You also want to make sure that you are always expressing gratitude to your students. So we know, right, that these students, without them, we wouldn't be teaching. We wouldn't be doing what we loved. And so just give them little reminders that you're grateful for them. I often, at the end of my class, I'll say, thank you so much for coming and sharing your morning and practice with me. I am so deeply grateful for that. And something that simple can be really powerful, and it helps to build up that community because the students know that they're valued and that we as teachers are grateful for them, because we are, but we don't always take the time to say it or to show it. So these are kind of the elements or the tips that I have for how to build community. And like I said, this can really be sort of the make or break. I told those stories about the two kind of tough interactions I've had at the studio that I love, and it really stuck with me. And I think that even though all the other elements were there of having a yoga experience, because that community wasn't there, that's kind of what made it go sour for me. And so really making sure that we're focusing on this, and if you make it a priority, it'll come naturally and it'll mean so much to your students. So that final element of creating a yoga experience is themes, intention, and sequencing. And really, there's just no way around this one. You have to have that rock solid sequencing. And just a little spoiler alert, soon I will be having a sequencing masterclass. I know that that's something that a lot of you have been asking me for, how to sequence. And so that is coming, I promise. But make sure that with your class, along with that strong sequencing, that you have a theme for class. So your theme is just your thread that you're going to weave through your class and help tell the why. So it's just kind of that narrative. So it can be something, it can be a physical theme like hip openers, or it can be more metaphorical like joy or gratitude, or it could be something like ocean or animals or whatever it is, right? Have a theme for your class. Have a thread that kind of weaves between the poses and then strings them together to create a really, really great experience. Like I said, right, that strong sequencing, it just has to be there. You have to be a boss at sequencing. If a class is not well sequenced, the students are going to be turned off, and it's going to be hard to elevate your teaching from class to experience. You always want to come prepared, but you also want to be flexible and willing to change and adjust when necessary. So always have that plan, right? We talked about be on time, be prepared, have your intention, know the why behind your class, maybe have some notes written down, or at least have a mental plan. But if someone comes in, like if someone has an injury or there's a new student, or, someone has a request, make sure that you're still flexible enough where you can flex elements of your plan. So you don't want to be so rigid and stuck to it that no matter what, you can't change it. So you want to give the students a little bit of what they want and a little bit of what they need. And so making sure that you do have that flexibility. So maybe, someone came in and they requested hip openers, and you just throw in a couple hip openers throughout your sequence to help, satisfy that student and give them what their body's asking for, but then also be able to stick with that plan that you put a lot of work and intention into. And then know the why behind your class. So why did you pick those things? And if you know it, then it'll be clear to your students that you really did put work and intention into this class for them. So that's that last element of a yoga experience. And now all that's left is for you to go and start offering experiences. Just go out and do it. I know that we went over a lot of information today. And now that you have the link to this class, you can watch it more times if you want. And really, I know that you will be able to do it. I know that you can do it. All you have to do is just follow these steps, work on them right. It's not going to be perfect at first, but this I have found really is the formula to elevating your teaching and creating these experiences. And you will be able to reach your students on just such a deeper level, and you will really be a masterful teacher when you start implementing these things. I do hope that you found this to be helpful. I'm so grateful that you decided to take this class with me. I have put my contact info here. So probably one of the easiest ways to get a hold of me directly is via email. I respond to every single email that I get from a student. I don't always respond quickly because I get a lot of emails, but I will respond. So if you have any questions or comments or feedback for me based on this course or anything else, you can go ahead and get a hold of me at info@yogaforyouonline.com. We are on Facebook, so there is a secret Facebook page. It's called the Yoga for You Crew, and I've only opened that up for anyone that has taken a training of mine, including this masterclass. So if you want to join that, shoot me an email and I will invite you to join. You, of course, can find the Yoga for You brand. We're on Instagram, and our website is www.yogaforyouonline.com. I hope that this was a good use of your time and that you feel inspired to go offer yoga experiences. And please share your success stories with me. I love to hear from students about how they're growing and thriving, or even their challenges. I want to help with that. So again, this was Kelly, founder of Yoga for You, the Stop Teaching Yoga Classes and Start Offering Yoga Experiences Masterclass. Thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful day.